I know that you are not gonna like this video, but I really do have to explain this, the effect that removing loot boxes from games will cause. See, now, since the whole loot box crisis, a lot of politicians, not the big politicians, but the little ones who want to make a name for themselves, they're starting to go in the media and say things like, oh, we don't like the Star Wars casino, we're going to remove this, we're going to start making legislation. And what's basically happened is that people with the U.S. and lawmakers and such, they're saying, hey, why isn't the ESRB, the little sticker that has the ratings for each game? These are what the retailers use. They use the ESRB to make a system, everyone, teenagers, mature, they use this system so that they can sell their games at retail stores. Like, they're not legally appointed, but the thing is, all retailers nowadays use that system. So if you don't use ESRB for your game, you have to get approved by them. If you don't use it, you can't really sell your games in any big retailers, which is suicide otherwise. But the issue is that lawmakers and stuff are saying, hey, ESRB, why aren't you doing action against this? Like, why is this not a criteria? When you read ESRB's stuff, you can see a quick summary, drop points of reasons why a game might have been rated teen or mature. Things like drug use, swear, sexual stuff, such as sexual nudity, that kind of stuff. And these are the reasons that can bump up a game's rating. But people are saying, hey, ESRB, why don't you recognize that these trading cards, these random loot box elements, why are they not gambling, and why is gambling not enough to push it up a little bit, push up the rating of a game? Why is the game still rated so leniently even though it actually has gambling elements? And now what's happening is you have a back forth situation where everyone is saying it's not my fault, and the ESRB is saying, oh, well, it's not against the law, so why should we, why should we do this? Stuff like drinking and drug use, that's against the law, that's fine to, bump up a rating, but, something like gambling, well, if it's not recognized legally as gambling, why should we, bump up the game's rating? Why should we even acknowledge that? And now it's a lot of conflict. But who this conflict is actually going to affect? It's going to affect the consumer no matter what. We can take different situations. Whether it be that game developers are forced to remove loot boxes and all of that junk from the games, if they're forced to remove it, or if they're too scared to put it into their games because of the backlash that people like EA has been receiving from Star Wars Battlefront 2, either one of those situations, it will be really bad for the consumer. If you look at all of the statistics and stuff, don't include the indie titles, but just include like bigger titles that always have physical copies at the game stores, or even any stores, Walmart, whatever, Best Buy, whatever you want to say. These games, these physical games, big name games, there's not as many, and now I'm not even going to say developers, there's not many publishers. Publishers are the ones responsible for manufacturing and, making sure that retailers have these games, and responsible for, organizing, hey, if we, pre-order exclusives at different retailers, you pre-order at GameStop, we'll make sure that the developers put this in the game, and then maybe something else for another retailer. They work out the deals and stuff with the retailers. So publishers are responsible for this. But if there's not that many publishers, there's only a few big name publishers nowadays. I would imagine it's less than 12. It's gotta be less than 100 for sure. It's a very, very little number of publishers that we have for video game titles. That means that implicitly, because in the business world, in most industries, collusion is illegal. When you work together to fix prices, that's illegal. So what companies do nowadays, and maybe you've noticed it, is that certain times of the year, they know what to do. It's called implicit collusion. It's when you don't formally say anything or write anything from one company to another, but you know that, oh, this is the time of the year. Like, you'll see Coke and Pepsi do this a lot. Certain times of the years they don't sell as well, like maybe holiday season and stuff. They have to bump down the prices a little bit, and vice versa. They have to bump up prices. It's called implicit collusion, and it's not recognized as actual like price fixing or like actual collusion. It's not recognized by the law. So what I would think would happen is if a lot of these big AAA publishers, if they cannot put loot boxes in the game or any microtransactions, whether it be for fear of backlash or because of new legislation in the future, if they don't do this, I feel like they're just going to screw the consumer over and increase the prices of games substantially. And what they will do is they will all do it at once. I'm telling you, you would think, what the hell? No, it's capitalism. No, this is late stage capitalism with so few competitors. No one is going to be different. They're all going to raise the prices together. Let me give you a funny example. Now, this is a Canadian example. Americans are lucky because Americans fight. Americans have common sense and fight for their rights. You know, they don't take shit. Canadians take shit. That's why we get shat on. We get inferior prices. In Canada, with the video game market, we had a period where our economy was so dependent on oil and gas, and I know I specialize in that industry too. We had a lot of our jobs in oil and gas, and when the price of oil went down, we speculate that happened because of maybe oversupply of manufacturing and producing the oil. When that happened, the oil prices fell down, so companies couldn't sell, they couldn't make as much profit on the oil, leading to a lot of layoffs. Really bad for certain provinces like Alberta especially. But what happened was the Canadian currency as a whole declined, and that was a little bit from like 2015 onwards. Now the currency has increased in price again. But what has happened with a lot of products, but let's look at video games exclusively, these games used to be priced so cheap, $69.99 or even yeah, I think that was the price before, but now every game is $89.99. The economy has gotten a little bit better since then, but you know what? Oh, even though our currency has improved, nope. Game prices are always fixed for $89.99. You know, even so many years after the currency has improved, after we've gotten ourselves out of what we had called a technical recession. Can you believe that? Like, you know, and it's because, you know, no one gives a fuck. Everyone's like, here, take my money. And we have no choice but to, you know, because of how the world is nowadays. But damn, like, look at that example. There's also another funny example where during 1 year, the PS4 consoles came out after about 2013, but like, you know, people would still, of course, be buying them in 2015, 2016. Our economy got so shitty that, well, for me at least, what I noticed was the PlayStation 4 price when it was released was cheaper when it was first released in 2013 compared to 2015, because when 2015 happened and the currency went so down, they really overpriced the console. Like, I mean, not even just match how the actual calculation of the currency. No, they actually went above that. They increased it like almost twice as much as what you could have bought it for lunch. It was so stupid. Like, can you imagine that buying a console at launch would have been cheaper than buying it 2 years after it had come out? Can you believe that? What the hell? Like, what? Damn. That's insane. But what am I trying to say? I know that's, economy. I know that was actually a reason, currency decline. Of course that would happen. That's expected to happen, you know, to a certain extent. But I really do feel like, because of how tiny, how small, how little competition there is, a lot of these publishers, they're going to get together, and they all might say, okay, no more microtransactions, well, let's just double the price in the game. Look at all the shit that's going on nowadays. Look at the games industry now. Collector's editions are being sold. And they're being sold for exorbitant amounts of money. And some of these collector's editions doesn't even have the game included. And I think to myself, what the hell is going on? I really do speculate that, like many other industries, with the video game industry, it's a tiny proportion of people, but this tiny proportion of people end up buying really crazy amounts of microtransactions, figures, a whole bunch of paraphernalia, collector's editions, all of this shit. And I wouldn't blame you, because maybe these people are really rich, but I don't like using this term, but people call, people who spend lots of money on transactions, microtransactions, they call them whales. I don't really like using this term, but it's kind of true. It's one of these kinds of markets where, even with McDonald's, they were saying that a long time ago, it's just a tiny amount of the actual customers they have. A tiny amount are the ones who actually make them an insane amount of money, and it's no exception. Now, some of these people might be really rich, like they might make what I make in a month, right? They make that in less than a day, what I make in a month. Maybe people make thousands in a single day. Some people can make that in an hour, some people in a minute, because of how rich they are. They can afford to spend so much money on these microtransactions, okay? That's fine. Some people actually do get in debt. They make little bits, and they get in debt just buying these microtransactions. It's crazy. But either way, it's bad. But I really do think that, I don't know what's going to happen. Is there going to be some kind of video game crash in the future? I wouldn't call it a crash per se, but I really do think that this loot box situation, it's gone out of hand. It has. It's not good. The government is going to do something wonky. This might not affect America, but this might actually affect other countries more. Countries that just don't have any common sense. Like, I know for Brazil it's a different reason, but because of Brazil's like importing laws and a whole bunch of political BS, not the same reason, different reasons, their games cost so much money. Can you imagine if they made video games like tobacco or like alcohol? These are very cheap items in Asia, for example. Everything is so cheap in Asia, but like drinks, alcohols, so cheap in Asia, but it's so expensive in North America, but Canada especially, because they tax it like crazy. The government just wants like extra money. They take advantage of people who are addicted, honestly. And they just pocket crazy amounts of money, and they overcharge what it makes to produce it. They charge like almost 10. I don't want to say 10 times the amount, but like crazy amounts more than what it's really worth. And that could happen to games in the future. I think that the loot box situation, while it was fun at first to watch, it's getting political. Everyone is saying, not my fault, not my fault. It's gonna lead to someone cracking down on it. When they crack down on it, they're just gonna bump the price back into the consumer somehow. I don't see it good. Like, I would have liked cheaper priced games that had microtransactions, because I could have just bought the game for cheap and just ignore the microtransactions. But can you imagine if they don't put microtransactions in games and they just price the game like twice as much? Can you imagine how shitty that would be? I don't know. I thought it was just so funny to rip on EA at first, and I think, of course, we should still rip up on them, but like, damn, I don't know. The situation, it's like a fire that's gone out of control. This needs to be contained somehow. No one is taking responsibility, but someone's gonna crack down on it eventually. It's just gonna be bad for the consumer. You see what I'm saying? I don't see anything good happening from this. I really don't. Before it could have been like a how should I say it, like a necessary evil to the games that have microtransactions. I didn't mind because I could ignore it. Some games might have gotten a little bit more grindy, but usually I would just enjoy like the gameplay of the game enough to just ignore microtransactions. Like, microtransactions were only so bad in mobile games, but for like actual console or PC games, most of the time you wouldn't have to give a shit about that. But like, what if something bad happens? I don't know. Like, imagine if they have to make some other kind of, like, let's say the ESRB, like, lawmakers don't like that. Imagine if countries start making their own version of that, or if someone else comes to take the reins, like, and ESRB fades away, like, that could happen. And can you imagine if these people, this new company who's very strict, whether it's actually like a worker on behalf of the government or the government itself, Can you imagine if they say to developers and publishers, oh, well, we cost we cost 3 times as much for us to evaluate your game. Like maybe ESRB didn't cost, of course, ESRB costed money before, but what if someone else comes to take the reins and they cost much more? The publishers are just going to shove the cost back onto the consumers, I'm telling you. I've seen this in other industries, manufacturing, and I think that the parallels can be made between those industries and the video game industry. You see a lot of people who love doing reviews for games, but I don't see many people who have seen the decline of many industrial markets. They have not done proper analysis on the video game market, and honestly, I don't see it looking good in the future. I can't. It's something is gonna give. Right now, like, it's a problem that so many companies have, that everyone is just trying to squeeze as much money as they can out of you. It's okay, but but this is weird. Like, look at the console generations, for example. They're releasing like halfway generation upgrade consoles. It's not even like an upgrade attachment you can add. No. They're just making like, PS4 Pro, Xbox One S, and all of this. And there's so many versions of each console. Like, Xbox One Scorpion, like this PS4 Pro, like there's so many versions of the consoles. I didn't see that since the old days. That used to be something I used to see a lot, like with the Atari consoles. And that was like right before the video game crash. I don't think that's gonna happen again, but something weird is gonna happen in the next decade or so. The trend is just gonna keep continuing somehow. Yes, the trend has split. It's you're either a big AAA developer to publisher, or you're an indie title. But I think the gap will just keep increasing. Like, you're gonna keep seeing rich spending AAA companies, and you're gonna see the tiny indie companies, and they both will get some success and failures. But this is weird. These consoles, what are they doing exactly? And the weirdest thing is that it's changed. In the old days, if you had multiple versions of consoles, usually they would help the poor people out. Like, when I bought the Xbox 360, yeah, that's a very old console. Back in '06 it was released, but they never used to be so crazy about this. Like, I remember the Xbox 360 when I bought it. It still had I think it was called the composite cables, and it had, what was it called, 480 resolution, and it was so old and stuff. And then eventually they came out with Xboxes with the HDMI cords, and then you could get like 720p as your resolution instead. But you can see that they would never have released a HDMI version of the console so early. No, they released a composite version of the console. But nowadays, because back then with the Xbox, they wanted to cater, because they knew that technology was not that advanced, and yeah, that a good proportion of the population would have like not so advanced technology. But now, what are they doing? Now it's like, oh, big fancy PlayStation and Xboxes, we want 4K, and then nothing really properly supports 4K. It's just a cheap ass checkerboard scaling. It's not true 4K, and most things can't even support 4K. It's like they're trying to run ahead before the technology actually comes out. What are they doing exactly from that? Like, you know what I mean? Now it's like a world where, ooh, let's be as extravagant as popular. I want to be the best. I want to be number one. Maybe this is because it's a little bit easier to get credit than the old days. Maybe it's because we live in an economy where we don't actually save money and buy for something. No, we actually get in debt, and then we pay off the debt when we buy something. That's how it works nowadays. And debt is like more acceptable than the old days. Like, in the old days, I would hear stories about people like saving up money and then making the purchase. But nowadays, what we actually do is we just get debt, and we live in a state of perpetual debt. It's sad, but it's true. But goddamn, I don't know. When I look at the last decade or two of the video games industry, it's really shitty. It's just a lot of consumerism. It's the trends that we've been seeing for so long. Things like, oh, microtransactions, like no more cheat codes, and this, that. It is almost like, it makes me speechless, as you can see. But overall, though, I think that this situation with loot boxes, it's going too far. It's going too far. Yeah, it's just tiny politicians right now, but it's going to escalate. I feel like it. People like to strike when the iron is hot. This can escalate. Things like laws. I noticed that people want to make themselves look good. Like, I noticed that so many of these laws, it just doesn't make sense. People just want to make themselves look good. I know in my country, Canada, Trudeau made a public apology just a few days ago in November, a big apology for a whole bunch of stuff. You know, Canada's known for apologizing. He apologized for events that happened hundreds of years ago that he had nothing to do with, you know? And well, I think to myself, oh, if each prime minister starts making an apology at a national event, then your apologies aren't going to mean jack shit. You know what I mean? The world is just so fake now. It's not. What I mean is that this can escalate. I don't see anything good. I think that the game prices are just gonna keep going up. They might even do something crappy like lock versions of the game. Like, as long as there is nothing legally wrong with what companies are doing, they're gonna keep pushing it. EA doesn't give a shit about the backlash. They're laughing at the backlash, I feel like. Yeah, well, we'll just fire one CEO and hire another one to just make it look like they're doing something. You know what I'm saying? They're just laughing because as long as what they're doing is not legally punishable, yeah, they're gonna just keep pushing and pushing the envelope. And when they push the envelope, it's like, it becomes the new norm, you know? They go 2 steps forward and 1 step back. And it becomes the new normal. And you didn't realize it at first, because, you know, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It didn't look so bad, you know? It looked like they were just going backwards, but no, they still went forward in the end. Yeah, I can imagine shit like multiple versions of the same game coming. No, I don't mean like Game of the Year edition. Not like that. I mean like, oh, 4K version of the game and regular version of the game. Like, I can imagine shit like that happening in the future. I can imagine some kind of, like, you know what I mean? Like, now it's acceptable to include bonuses for pre-ordering games. That's fine. That's fine. I'm talking about something else, like locking different versions of the game, making a tired version of games themselves. I'm telling you, we have not reached the tip of the evilness that can. It's gonna get a lot worse in the future. That's my thoughts. I'm gonna end on that. It's going to get a lot worse. I've seen it in many industries. In other industries, there are laws to protect against this, but what EA is doing, it's not technically legally fraud or anything like that. No. But I guarantee to you, they're going to keep pushing the envelope farther and farther and farther, and they're laughing. They don't give a shit. They're making money like mad. Yeah, sure, investors have dipped out the money, but that's different. They might reinvest later. It's not the same as a game not selling well on its own. The games are still selling well. They're going to keep going in the future. They're going to keep pushing it, I'm telling you. And it's going to become the new norm, so watch out. I don't think we can even do anything to prevent what the actions that are already set in motion. If you enjoyed watching the content in this video, please give it a like. Also, please consider